name is Mike McGhee. I'm the tech marketing team with Nutanix. Nutanix 11 years, so I was EMC almost 16 years before then. I've launched into the Data Lens interface here, what Vishal was just talking about. And within this, we can analyze object stores, file servers, Nutanix file servers, but also third-party object stores as well. So if you notice under object stores here, we have AWS-based S3 object store. So the same way we collect information, the metadata, data age, name of the file, size of the files, and the objects, et cetera, we can do that across certain third parties like AWS S3. So that's the metadata piece of it. But at the same time, we're also taking in real-time audit trails to start to answer your question, Malcolm. So as a part of intaking those audit trails, we understand the patterns. We know what reads, writes, permission changes, set attributes, et cetera, are coming into the system. So
Mike, is Data Lens a separate solution aside from the storage, or is it bundled in with the storage? Is it bundled in with the Nutanix solution? I'm not sure. Where does it play?
Sure. Data Lens today is a software as a service that runs in the public cloud. It has integrations into what we do. So for example, when I say Data Lens does a scan, it doesn't do the scan. It requests the file server to do the scan to collect that metadata, and then it'll send the metadata to Data Lens. But like Vishal mentioned, it will also be on-prem in the not too distant future.
And it will be bundled with the same NES offering, yes.
Yep. And then same with the audit trails. So we have a way to publish the audit trails from our systems, either to third parties. So we have third parties that ingest that system as well. And Data Lens is just another client to it ultimately when it comes to that real-time information as it comes in. So if I pick on a particular file server here, you can see some of the metadata, but again, I want to really address that question directly. So if I go to the ransomware protection page, we really have two forms of protection. One is signature-based.
Can you confirm? So is Data Lens specifically designed for AI workloads, or is it just something that's general and can be applied to AI workloads?
The latter. It could be applied to AI workloads, but it's not specific to AI workloads. It's really looking at it could be a VMS solution reading and writing to the system. It could be end users. It could be an EUC use case, home directories and whatnot. It could be healthcare, PACS-based data. It could really be anything that feeds into the system, creates those audit trails that we can then monitor. So it's not exclusive to AI, but it could also work with AI clients as well.
Okay.
Yep. So two real forms. One is signature-based, and this is where we have a stock, if you will, list of existing file signatures by the name or by the extension. And when you first enable Data Lens, we'll actually go through that metadata and look at the system and see if you have any existing patterns there. And if it does, we'll warn you. In fact, the little bar on the top, you can see in the system, we found existing files that match some of those audit trails, or I should say file signatures. And because of that, we'll actually apply that to the blocking list of the file server. So we don't want to start blocking files that might actually be okay, the false positive prevention like Vishal was mentioning. So we'll alert you to that, and then from that point on, you can choose to allow list those files if you want, or if maybe it was malicious, you're now aware that you had some activity, some malware, some ransomware operating on the
Mike,
system.
just to be clear, the signatures that you're looking for are file extensions or file name signatures?
Correct.
For a particular malware instance?
Right, based on historical information and those that have been out there in the wild. And then for what you might consider new or not based on file signature patterns, we look for, I would summarize it as two main types of events. So an in-place encryption event or an out-of-place encryption event. And that's where we have algorithms through Data Lens as it sees these audit trails come in. Does it look like a read of a file, an overwrite of the file, perhaps a rename of the file? And did the MIME type of that file change? So for example, did it go from a PDF or a doc or a CSV or what have you to like an octet set or an encrypted file? And we'll actually interrogate the file on the system to see if it did change to a binary scenario. And if that's the case, we consider that a threat. And we have ways to look at it in place or out of place.
I'll let you get on real quick on that. But so are you receiving, is this all Nutanix IP? So in other words, this is all your kind of intelligence and everything wrapped up? Or are you receiving sensor feeds from folks like Gray Noise or, Symantec or whatever as they identify things out in the wild as well, so that you have a more globalized view of these are the changes that are happening, because rapid cycling within this industry is massive, right?
Sure. So I don't think we have integration with third parties like that, like the pattern detection when it comes to the audit trails, that is something that that we have, and it's based on our existing user base. We have quite a few customers that leverage this. So just based on the patterns that we see, and there's known applications that write in weird ways that kind of look like an in-place like encryption event. So we have intelligence in the system to try to prevent flagging that and causing a false positive, et cetera.
Yeah, so pure signature based is what we get from the open source community, like all the known ones, that the Lockies and all those file extension based, that we leverage the community for that. The new ones which we are not known signatures, those are the ones where these algorithms that we have built comes into play.
Absolutely.
So you leverage open source signatures and you develop your own.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the behavioral one is developed by us.
Sorry.
Oh, good. Awesome. Yeah, and so when we do, and you can see in this environment, the test environment, so we detected some operations. You can see things like the clients we blocked, and I haven't gotten into our audit trail specifically, but because we have those full audit trails, if we detect something and we block that end client or user, we can see the full activity of what they've been up to. And if it turns out to be harmless, we can unblock them, or we can quarantine, we can export this out, draw reports against this activity, forward it off to a security team or what have you. So getting those additional insights. And then for any particular threat, we were talking about the timing, right? So we have various threats on this system. If I click on threats, so for example, for this threat on top, if let's say that's innocuous, that turns out not to be a typical pattern or operation on the system, I can simply say manage, and I can allow list that client, that user against that share, against the whole system, or against that particular file type. So we make it very easy to remediate if for some reason there's an existing pattern in the environment, which is okay that we detect. And then when it comes to impacted files, so again, talking about that timing, we'll actually log and give you a list of any of the files that we consider that might have been impacted as a part of that overall operation. So for example, if I click on the affected files in this environment, if I wanted to then piecemeal restore, maybe I don't have to restore that entire share. Maybe I just want to restore those individual files. We'll actually recommend to you, if you click recover, what snapshot we think would be the best one to recover from, because it's older than the event. So the files were not touched or not encrypted since that point in time. So we would recommend that snapshot to then pull it over. And then if it's a larger event and you don't want to piecemeal or pick through, you can actually go to the impacted shares here and simply say recover. So for example, on that same share, and this is where, again, we recommend a snapshot. All you do is click recover, and we'll actually do a block-based fast recovery of that share in place. So if it was a larger, more pervasive event, it would get you back to a known state quickly. So again, going back to what Vishal was saying, part of it is detecting it quickly, stopping it, but also recovering it as quickly as possible to get you back in business.
Hi, Carl Fugate. So one of the things that we're really seeing in incident response now is that while this is great, and this really helps from the data plane perspective, what we're seeing is attackers are starting to go after the administrative plane even more. So having the immutable copy is kind of that first step, and it's absolutely one of the most important. But one of the others is making sure that from an administrative control perspective that I can't go and delete that immutable copy if an attacker were to get access to those administrative credentials. How do you guys handle that in your system, providing kind of that segmentation of those administrative roles and still protect the immutable backup or the vaulted backup?
Sure. So if I flip back, so I was going to start this particular demo.
DC comic fans here.
With Prism. So we talked about Nutanix Central and Prism, which is our management interface before. Prism, regardless of if you're using the file server, the object store, if you're using looking at the underlying infrastructure, the virtualization layer, the Kubernetes layer, to access this, we have full-blown role-based access control. So if you wanted to really segment the underlying user base to only have access to certain operations, that's one of the primary things that we would recommend. We also have a security dashboard, which you can see at the bottom here. That gives you kind of an up-to-date understanding of did you change your system like default passwords.
I guess to follow on to Carl's question, if I have an immutable snapshot, do I have something that provides a guaranteed date where it can't be deleted by? Let's say, can I say it can't be deleted for the next 90 days or 2 years or something like that? And even if you're on admin and I follow through the RBAC and I get through all the way to prison and I'm there on super user, I still can't touch it.
Yeah, so from an object store perspective, between worm and versioning, we do. Yeah. So those are prevented like administratively from being removed. On the file server side, the snapshots are are immutable, but we don't have necessarily what you might consider a secure snap facility where you would block out the administrator for a certain period of time of deleting those particular snapshots. We do have worm capabilities for that. So if you wanted to lock down the file server itself or the file share itself to worm policies, we do allow you to do that.
But that's the active file share. That's not the snapshots.
Correct, but I mean like administrative access to the file server is functionally what I'm getting
That
at.
answer your question, Carl?
Yeah, so I'd essentially be able to create a vault, a worm vault for these that even an administrator would not be able to go delete them during whatever the retention policy is. That
Using replication or something like that, or
I don't know. That's what I'm.
Well, no, it's because we're locking down that object store. So that object store from a worm perspective.
Understand the object storage perspective, but is it because your object storage is actually a back end for all this stuff? Is that what you're talking about?
No.
He's talking about a file system or a file share or something like that. He wants to lock down a file share.
Yeah, so file share perspective, it would be the worm capability for the file share itself. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm specifically talking about the immutable snapshot or backup of the data, is making sure that there's a lot of different ways that companies have gone about handling this, but being able to set a retention policy such that even an administrator cannot touch that file during that retention period.
Snapshot.
The snapshot, so that if an attacker were to go after the backup, that we would still have access to it.
Correct. Yeah. So on the file server side, we don't offer that today. I don't know if there's roadmap items we can
maybe
discuss
let me
there.
cover that part. So in fact, one of the capabilities that we support for the entire platform is the secure snap. That's the capability that we call it. It is primarily a multi-factor authentication based piece where one admin cannot delete it. You need to have a quorum to delete that piece. It's already part of the main platform. We are bringing it to both the storage, the files and storage offering, where it will require that multi-factor authentication before you can delete a snapshot.
That's a really good feature. That definitely helps provide that segmentation.
Yeah.
And you're concerned as somebody coming in and pretending admin, super user.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing, right? So the first thing that an attacker is going after is the backup. So they don't want, because so many platforms now have these ransomware capabilities built in, so they've got the detection. So they know as soon as it gets detected, it's going to go into lockdown, and now I'm just going to revert back. Well, the first thing they do is they say, well, I'm going to go delete the backups, so that when this starts kicking off, now I can't actually go back to that previous point in time because I already dropped that. So I go after that first, and then I can go ahead and execute my encryption.
Yeah, it makes sense. Or attempts to modify the policy. So for example, on the object side, we have anomaly detection. If someone tries to modify the policy of the bucket, like disable versioning,
Same.
try to to expire the worm earlier, right? Like that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So if someone tries to do that, Data Lens actually has intelligence to flag that as a threat, based on its anomaly detection, outside of just the actual patterns coming in, like a data exfiltration event, which is another example, which is more common on the object side. Less concerned about encryption, but if someone trying to draw data out for maybe blackmail purposes or what have you. So there's the anomaly detection and ransomware protection on the object side is more catered to that particular use case because it's less about in place and more about pulling the data out or modifying policies, exactly like you said.
Yep.
Absolutely.
To go to the other side of the security question, giving power users or end users full access to do what they want, not necessarily on the system, but even like in AI workloads or even a secretary running through whatever she's doing to be able to quickly stand something up and build on their own, especially for training models, labbing, stuff like that. So what tools are you giving your platform teams to make it easier to build those for their users?
To build the security controls,
Like,
to limit
So
global access.
if I'm
limit
if I'm a
administrative
platform
access.
team,
Yep.
okay, I'm looking at having to maintain this under a DevOps operation, but
Sure.
then I also have my developers screaming down my throat
Oh, sure.
because they have to wait 2 days to get their inference job back online because they had to submit a damn ticket. They need to run their own inference pipelines. They need to do their own stuff. And to soapbox a little, that's one thing we failed with at cloud and on-prem is providing end users the right tools. We still forced them to go through IT. Quit that. So the tools, we need to percolate those up to the platform teams so they can develop better solutions for their users.
So API access to the end user? Almost?
Even further,
With
so what
RBAC,
packages, what libraries, what tools on top of your API, what data are you percolating up from these deep level inspections? Not necessarily you can go here and look at it. We don't care about data that's now existing from alerts. What action are you taking on that data now? And where are you giving it to the user?
Yeah, so I'll approach it a few ways. So like on this same cluster, for example, and I know we're running short on time, and I was going to go into it. So for example, our Nutanix Kubernetes platform is running here. So an infrastructure administrator would have, to Keith's point earlier around a simple consolidated platform that is the same operation model regardless where you run. We can do that. But for that end user, they might want direct access into that Kubernetes environment to have, or an API endpoint to have a better understanding of what's occurring at that level. And that's where NKP comes in. So Kubernetes platform gives its own, API capability management to the end user or an administrator at its level. So while we see it here from an infrastructure perspective, we want to make sure it performs. If there's inferencing or what have you occurring against it, we'll be able to monitor it the same way we monitor the Milvus database or the PG vector or the object store or the file server. But if you want to then give those end users, those platform engineers access, you could give them access to NKP. Yeah. And the same with NAI. So the Nutanix, enterprise AI platform has its own endpoint, API endpoint for individual users, for developers, for for those practitioners. And the same with NDB. So our database platform, fully API compliant. If you're an infrastructure admin, you can monitor it from here. So I literally have PG, SQL databases in this environment. But then, for the DBA, they might need access to the Era front-end API to then automate operations there. Whether it's consistent deployment, consistent upgrades,
So Ryan,
top
you're
data
asking for something
management,
like
et
a
cetera.
Python SDK for their API, or
No. So as an end user, if I'm kicking off an inference job, or not an inference job, a training job, I want to be able to watch that progress. And like if I do that, in a very great example of doing this right is Notebook LM. We attach an entire cloud to a Word document, okay? And anybody can use it. Now, as a user in Notebook LM, in Colab, if I see that inference job fail, I just click retry. And so the notion that we have to go back to an IT team, from anything is ridiculous for this type of stuff. That should be passed up to the user. And so the platform teams have to build those tools off of the vendor's APIs to abstract all that knowledge that the user doesn't care about. And it's not just pushing out an API or just a set of clients to your customers. It's about providing an ecosystem or a framework or something bigger. I saw y'all's pipeline tool that y'all talked about at the beginning, and that's a great start. Like take that pipeline tool, give your admins, your DevOps team superpowers to handle those at a deep level without needing the ML ops experience, but allow your end users to be able to interact with that as well or get the information out of it to do their job better. Yeah. Anyways, I'll drop my sim.
No, it's very true. And that's a big part of the NAI, like I mentioned, like the observability piece of it, even down to understanding like GPU utilization, et cetera, could be bubbled up beyond just that infrastructure team to those end users.
And it goes as simple because a lot of that too, like everything is very passive to our end users now. So requests just get fired down a long tunnel of a black hole and they never see. So if they submit a ticket or they say, hey, retry, do they get the information back that it's actually retrying? Is it doing? Or is there no reason to retry because services are down? So.
Great feedback.
Yeah, appreciate that perspective. Yeah, absolutely.